History of the Jordanów Jewish Cemetery. An organized Jewish community in Jordanów already existed at the beginning of the 19th century. The community had the infrastructure necessary for its functioning, i.e. its own cemetery, synagogue and ritual bathhouse. In 1887, Israel Schreiber, a merchant from Sanok, was elected to the office of rabbi. According to statistical data, the total population of Jordanów in 1921 was 1,486 people, 669 men, 817 women, including 238 Jews, which constituted 16% of the population. Thus, approximately every sixth inhabitant of Jordanów was a follower of the Mosaic religion. For comparison, in Rabka this percentage was approximately 10%, and in Novi Targ approximately 17%. The research on the Jewish community in Jordanów was described in the book by Grzegorz Miskowicz, The Life and Extermination of the Israeli Religious Community in Jordanów. The cemetery was an element of infrastructure without which the Jewish community could not function. In Jordanów, the cemetery is located in the Munkic district, along the road leading to Makiv Podolansky and Sucha Beskidzka. GPS location: N49 degrees 39 minutes 26.0509 seconds, E19 degree 48, 26.4371. It covers an area of 0.58 hectares. Although it was intended for the territorially extensive religious community in Jordanów, it was also used by the Jews from Sucha Beskidzka, for whom the proper cemetery in Żywiec caused greater communication difficulties. The Jordanów Jewish Cemetery was established in the 19th century. The oldest surviving matzeva of Samuel Newman comes from 1883. The space of the cemetery was surrounded by a high wall. From the eastern side, the wall with vertical pillars is made of brick on a concrete foundation. The other walls have a boarded concrete structure, decorated in the western part, from the inside, with decorative plaster. The top of this fragmentary western wall is covered with broken pieces of original, 19th century bottles, which constitute an additional, though rather symbolic, protection against crossing it. It is not known when exactly the fence was built. However, a brick was preserved, which was distributed among the community for finishing the fence and building a mikveh. A brick had a price of 20 hellers. Thanks to this, its distribution can be dated to the years 1892 to 2018, because then this currency was in use, introduced by the Austrian invader. During World War II, Wilhelm Rosenbaum, commander of the German School of Security Police and Security Service Commanders in Rabka, ordered a parade ground and monumental stairs leading to it to be built in the courtyard. Their design, which the commandant himself took care of, provided for placing the image of the German eagle in the plane of the stairs. Two colors of granite were needed for the cladding: gray and black. Jewish cemeteries were the only place to obtain this material. Only two could come into play. in Jordanów and Mesana. So they were robbed of valuable material. The Jordanów cemetery still haunts with skeletons of tombs, deprived of the original sheathing. However, the devastation did not end there. All mats of it suitable for construction purposes were also taken. They were used to harden the square, the road to the nearby shooting ranges, as well as to regulate the stream flowing nearby. After the war, when the cemetery of mass murder victims was established near the German torture chamber, these mats of it were used to build the lapidarium. Their relocation to their original place remains a pressing problem. This monument also includes the matzevot of the first Rabbi Jordanov, Israel Schreiber, and his wife, Hinda. Cemetery murders and mass graves. Until the day of the Holocaust and the deportation, which took place in Jordanów on August 29, 1942. Witnesses of those days testify about a number of individual executions of Jews taking place in the local cemetery. To this day, some monuments bear traces of revolver bullets. According to testimonies during the investigation, which was conducted from the 1970s until 2016, we know of at least 3 mass graves. One of these graves was examined and marked in 2022 by researchers from the Forgotten Foundation. One can only guess about the location of the other graves. The first mass grave was dug for the corpses of a dozen or so Jews from the nearby village of Naprawa, which were brought by Stanislaw Reznik in the summer on a slurry cart. At that time, after dropping the bodies from the cart, Ferdinand Bodik buried the grave. The second, largest mass burial is the result of the post-war exhumation of Jews murdered near Zakrati on the day of deportation, i.e. August 29, 1942. The third, large grave contains 15 bodies of women and men who were murdered only in the cemetery. The bodies were naked, because before being shot and approaching the pit, everyone had to undress in the pre-burial house, the so-called Tahara Shtibel, purification room. The only clue about the location of the grave was left by an eyewitness, Vladislav K. When the Germans shot the Jews, I was hidden behind the mortuary, i.e. about 100 steps from the pit above which the shooting was taking place. 100 steps, so about 100 meters. What could that mean? The morgue, as Vladislav K. called it, was located at the beginning of the cemetery, at the entrance to it, from the north. The cemetery is just over 150 meters long. So the pit would be 2/3 of its length. In this place, stretching depressions in the shape of a gorge are still visible today. These places coincide with the former alleys between the rows of matzevot. It is logical to dig holes in such empty spaces, of which there are not many in this cemetery, because it was the burial place for the entire commune of 35 villages. Full information on the murders of Jews on the day of deportation on August 29, 1942 in Jordanów can be found in Grzegorz Miskowicz's book, They Were Silent Waiting for Death. The book contains the results of the investigation, conducted from 1974 to 2016. It includes witness statements with descriptions of the murders before, during and after the deportation, as well as a list of all Jews who lived in Jordanów and all Jews who were resettled there from various places and many countries. The book is available at the U.S. Library of Congress, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, and other U.S. libraries. After the war, what had some value was also plundered. Metal plaques were stolen for scrap. Bricks were a very sought-after building material, especially in the city, which was burned down twice during the war. Part of the wall was looted, especially the pre-burial house, Taha Steeple. In the aerial photos from June 1944 and February 1945, the house was still intact. Hence we know that its destruction took place after the war. Until 2016, no work was carried out at the cemetery. The whole area was covered with a thicket of trees and bushes. Only in early spring and just before winter could you see the skeletons of tombs hidden among the branches. Revitalization. In 2016, 20 new spans of the brick wall were erected. The northern wall with the entrance to the cemetery was also fenced. The remaining unfenced part was fenced provisionally, with a sparse forest net. The cemetery was still wooded, with huge poplars growing along its western border. In 2019, permission was obtained to cut down trees and shrubs from the entire cemetery. The work was difficult due to the inability to use heavy equipment that could destroy the lying mats of it. In the same year, the western part of the cemetery was fenced. About 150 meters of very high and thick mesh were placed. In this way, the entire cemetery was fenced, which is a basic requirement of every Jewish cemetery. an entrance gate. In 2020, it turned out that the main entrance to the cemetery leads through a plot that does not have a designated easement for access to the cemetery. Although this is not a problem at present, it was necessary to think about the future in the context of the possibility of legally entering the cemetery. Therefore, a new double-leaf gate was built and placed on the eastern side, along which the municipal road, formerly, runs along the wall. In 2022, 2 new spans of brick wall were erected around the main gate. On the outside of the entrance, there is a commemorative plaque dedicated to the Jews from Jordanów murdered during World War II and the Jews displaced from various places in Poland and Europe who found themselves in the city. A huge number of mats of it were taken by the Germans to Rabka. Only a few remain. Most of them are in very bad condition, broken and overturned, stripped of metal plates. Those mats of it that can be saved are reconstructed, glued, cleaned and strengthened. Where possible, colors are restored to faded letters. It is a tedious process that requires a long time and appropriate expenditures, just like all other works. There is always a lot of work to keep the cemetery in its restored form. Mowing and pruning of shoots 3 or 4 times a year is continued cyclically. In the near future, there are plans to place 5 plaques in the wall commemorating the rabbi and individual families whose original matzevot were looted. Great importance should be attached to the creation of an obelisk on the designated mass grave of 70 murdered Jews on the day of the Holocaust. The places of other mass graves should also be examined. The most important thing is still the memory of the nation that was murdered in such a bestial way in this city.